Good evening, everyone. Unusual start to the evening. Good to be with you all. Hope everybody is well, had a groovy week. I think I'd like to start by just reflecting on, like Flavia has, and I really trust with these programs, these weekly meetings, that everything happens on purpose. That's why I don't try to control it too much, and I'm quite fluid. I always leave the sort of setup and creating the PowerPoint until the day itself, so that it's there in my mind. It's the only thing I do throughout the day. Sometimes 2 days, so Wednesday and Thursday, leading up to Thursday night. So it's sort of clear and present in my mind. I've had quite a few personal messages from different people telling me about their experience of attending the weekly meetings and doing their maps. And what seems to be happening for a lot of people is that it's the process of doing the map and then having a week sort of working with the map, and then another warrior within session, and then doing a map in a week and doing the map. It's that process of having a week to look at the map, make changes, think about it, that is triggering things for a lot of people in the way that a workshop doesn't. A lot of you, if not all of you, or most of you certainly, Natalie and a few others not, but most of you have been on workshops with me. And you've had that experience. So we're together in the workshop. There's a lot of realizations, a lot of breakthrough, a lot of energy. The workshop's normally for 1 day. It ends and we all go away. And we do follow through to different degrees. If we didn't follow through, you wouldn't be here. We wouldn't all be connected tonight. So everybody follows through to different degrees. Sometimes there's an intensive workshop like Shine, and a number of you have been on Shine, some of you many times. And there we've got 3 days and 2 nights and party and face the fear, and it's a lot of energy. And again, after 3 days, it ends and we go away. And what's different with this program, not necessarily better, because I miss that physical contact. I would love to have a really good hug with you all, a long, lingering, lasting hug as well, because I'm really feeling I want that at the moment. But what's great about this format is that ability to have a week where you look and you think and you process. And I put my hand up. It has moved me this period for a lot of different reasons. One, because I won't run a program like this or a workshop without doing the work myself. And I think, like most people, I get a little bit lazy and complacent at times. And so, because of running the program, it's made me work and live my maps in a way that I haven't done for a while. It's made me really engage in them. I've noticed in these last years where I've been doing lots of one-to-one coaching, that quite often when I'm coaching someone, they're getting up an hour earlier than they need to do their map, because they know there's a coaching session coming with me and they haven't done it. And they fess up on the coaching session, Brian, if there wasn't a session, I wouldn't have done my map. It's exactly the same for me. So today, it pushed me into action to do my action map, because I knew the session was coming. And wow, I had a real experience with this today. What I thought was going to be the habit or routine I would change was not the habit or routine I would change. And I changed something very different. I thought it was going to be about being lazy with exercise. And I mentioned that last Thursday, when we connected in the last session, I gave the example. But actually, from Friday morning onwards, I've been out, I think I've missed one day. I've been out exercising every day, and I didn't do the map. I think talking it through and saying, and tomorrow I'm going to get up and exercise, was actually enough to trigger me. And taking exercise is on my goal map. So it's not like it isn't something that wasn't there. But today I took my goal map, my health and well-being goal map, out my folder, and I tore it up and I threw it in the bin because I realized I'd become disconnected to it. I was going through the motions. I'm looking at it again, yeah. But I was actually disconnected to it. I don't know if anybody else can sort of associate with that. Richard's got your hand up, yeah? So no, it's in the bin, which will trigger me to create a new one in the next few days. And I'll refresh those brain cell connections. And it's the same as I've been saying for a long time. You know, it's not knowing the program or the content or the principles. It's about applying them. This has really had an effect on me today. The new action map. I think without question, it's the best one I've ever done. And I'm not just on about the drawings, and I am quite pleased with them. It's about the insights that came when I was creating the map. And the thing that showed up for me that I realized, wow, I need to work on, was that I distract myself. There's a part of me that is still, and it took me a lot of thinking to get to the root of this, but there's a part of me that's still afraid of failure. And when I've got something difficult to do in the day, I avoid it. And I avoid it by distracting myself with other things, low self things. And I realized that I'd fallen out of my best rhythm. I think all of us have a pattern of behavior, a pattern of thought and feeling and action that is best for us. Mine is I get up, I go for a run, either here along the seafront or wherever I am. And I come back and I meditate. And Stephen, I'm looking at you because I know that you're really diligent with your TM meditation, transcendental meditation. And I do TM, but I've got very, very lazy with it this last year. But it was about a year ago when I got ill and I got took into hospital with the blood clots in my lungs. And that threw me out of my normal patterns of behavior, thought, feeling, action. And I sort of persevered with it on and off, but I wasn't in that normal flow. And then the thing that I noticed that really threw me out of it was going back to live with my mother for 3 months during the worst of the lockdown. Got out of my normal pattern. Sometimes I'd go out and exercise, but not so often. Wasn't doing my meditation. And I would write my journals most days, but it wasn't in that same pattern of go out for the exercise, do the meditation, look at your maps, write in the journal. That's been my routine for years and years and years, like 20 odd years. But last year I got out of that rhythm. And today, in doing the action map, I really saw it clearly that I get out of a pattern, I distract myself. The new habit pattern I picked up while living with my mother for 3 months was watching the news in the morning. It's a thing I tell people not to do, but found myself doing it. And I've been here at my new apartment now for, I don't know, maybe 6 weeks. And still find myself putting on the TV and watching the news in the morning, which is the pattern I got back into with my mum. And it's a pattern I grew up with because it's something my dad would do from when I was little. but I got myself out of it. I've sort of slipped back into it. I think it's very, very easy for us as humans to slip into old patterns very often, whether that's a pattern of thought or feeling or behavior or energy, and we pick up feelings. And so what these last weeks have done for me is very much got me back into positive patterns, and it's given me the looking for the right word. It's not motivation. It's the added reason, the added, this is important, go do your maps. Go do your maps, look at your maps, live your maps, make a stand. It's important. And I'd sort of push that to one side. One of the things that I've put on my map here, and I've written them all on the angle, is on the physical of my action map. It's about giving time to myself, because time is a gift. And what I noticed was when I examined, and I was asking myself, well, so why haven't I? It's been months. Why haven't I done a new action map? Why haven't I done a new self map? So, I'm too busy. I'm too busy working. I'm too busy helping other people. I'm too busy doing this, that, or the other. I wasn't giving the time to my high self, okay, to help my low self. And so it's been a wake-up call for me these last weeks. And a lot of people have written to me privately saying similar things. Not necessarily because they didn't want to speak up in front of the group, but they didn't want to take air time on it. But it's doing the maps, it's working the process that makes the connections, it's doing the breathing, doing the meditation, doing all those different things that actually makes it work. Does that make sense to everyone? Anyone like to share anything about their experience over the last weeks of following through with the maps and everything? Hand up, Cully.
I think for me, same thing about routine. After doing my overall map, the whole life, that one, whereas I've bought the whole life one, like, I found that I really wanted to embed it. It was easy to do when you got your life map, you know, your I ams, but this one you really wanted to get your whole attitude and emotion in. So what I did, everybody's different, but I highly recommend this. I recorded my map and the picture, right, onto my phone. So it was like 3 minutes. I basically, you know, said I started from the top, and I said spiritually, I used the chakras again spiritually, and I went to purpose, and I went mentally, and I went through it, recorded it, and then because I love my map now, so I've got the whole thing so much. On my morning walk, I put that on first. So I listened to the recording while I'm walking in the park, out in the nature, and it's so easy then, it's so powerful to see the picture. And then sometimes I'll go on to sit on a bench at the end again and just listen to it again if I feel. So I feel like if you're being, because of, yeah, we beat ourselves up for not having enough time or everything, but it kickstart that. So not only are you getting your exercise and fitness, you're mentally putting all this positivity into your mind that so it's worked really. I mean, it's at 7 o'clock in the morning, I'll go do my walks, but I found that it's worked this week alone. It's just worked magic for me. So
well done, Cully. Richard?
Yeah, what I've found over the week's period, it's certainly I've done exactly what everyone else has done. What you've said is that having a week the most valuable thing has been I've actually fine-tuned my map. Whereas before, certainly when being in workshops, or if I've delivered a workshop myself and I'm doing it myself, I walk away with the map and that's the map I use. Whereas this time, I've fine-tuned every single one, and I found things that actually brought things into sharper focus. Like with the action map, when I first sat down on Thursday night, I thought it's because I procrastinate. And yes, I do procrastinate, but I always get the job done eventually. And I'll write a to-do list, and then I nag, and something that starts at number 10, it works its way slowly up the list, and eventually I'll do it. The stuff that I don't do is the stuff I never get started. So I don't procrastinate. It's just those things. So that's where my action map was, to say, I've actually got to grasp the nettle. I've got to leap. I've got to actually do these things. And having that week to actually fine tune it has made a huge difference. And so all my maps are better. And like you, I went through my maps this week, and there are some that I've completely disengaged with and I've chucked them out. There are some I've cleared off my page online because they are now irrelevant. And they've been sitting there for ages, but as you say, I am now disengaged from them. They don't mean anything. Whereas these ones are much more weighty. So yeah, I mean, the whole process has been an enlightenment, I think is probably fair to say.
Yeah, and I think it's the same for everyone, really, that we become desensitized. And when the map is meaningful, that's when it's having its maximum beneficial impact. And if it's no longer meaningful, it may still be pleasing to the eye because you go, oh yeah, it's familiar and it's comforting. But if it's not engaging in the same way, it's about the words and the pictures. And the thing that I noticed with my action map today is I really enjoyed getting the statements in a powerful way. And I'm finding that both with the action map and with the self map, and it's been a while since I've done a self map too. I've been so fully engaged with goal mapping and life mapping. Sometimes it's the words, the affirmation, the chant. And remember, chant's really important. That's why priests and priestesses have done it for thousands and thousands of years. Sometimes it's the words that are influencing my insight with the picture. And sometimes it's the imagery that, when I change the drawing a little, really influences the words. And with my self map, I've colored it in, and I've added, I really like using gel pens, metallic gel pens, because you can draw over the top of the ordinary picture, but you can add another level of meaning. And with the action map here, I've kept the imagery fairly simple, but the depth of meaning for me is huge. I've really played with the sacred geometry and the ratio of how the triangles, circles, squares come together and what their meaning is. I've done the same thing in my self map, and I'll explain some of it as we go through tonight. Dana, you were one of the people that wrote to me privately. We had a little chat outside of the group, and you've been to Shine, and you had a really strong experience at Shine, a bit of a breakthrough here on the island. And we had a quick chat about it. Now, I don't know what it is that you're going to say, but I thought it would be a nice thing to invite you to share as you're having the experience of both the physical version of Warrior Within with Shine and also here in the program. So the floor is yours.
Hi everybody, thank you so much, Brian, for giving me this opportunity. And I hope the sound's okay and everything. Let me know if there's any issues.
All good.
Good. What I'd like to talk about is awakenings. So are any of you experiencing awakenings as we go through this journey together now on Shine? Have you experienced an awakening in your life? To me, life is a series of awakenings, some more dramatic than others. And what I'm probably going to say to you, some of it is probably going to be a bit woo-woo for some of you, because for me, it was a bit woo-woo for me at the time. So start from, well, let me come back a minute. What awakening is, so it's an act or a moment of becoming suddenly aware of something. So it's really like a change of belief or perspective or life view. So when I was a teenager, I think there was a certain point when my beliefs became set, and it was all about working hard. It was about achieving, it was about education. And I went on, I did a top degree, I worked for some shadow ministers, I worked for a national charity, I stood for public office, all by the age of 24. But something was missing, and I don't know if any of you have felt that. Have you all got like really successful careers, or, you know, everything seems right, but there's just something missing? Well, that's what it was for me. And this is sort of when my awakening began to happen. It really, so I started looking on YouTube videos. It's one of the things I did, about chakras, about higher self, about the ego. And there's lots of information out there. And I think for people, there's no right or wrong. I think whatever speaks to you is right for you. There's lots of variations of what works for you. And I went to a healing festival as part of my new exploration, and it was by chance. I went to a workshop by Brian at Ventnor Botanic Gardens, and this is really how it all began for me to really accelerate things. And what happened there was the first time I did the arrow breaking, which I'm sure many of you might have done or you know about, is where you get a Native American arrow, the sharp pointy bit is in your throat, and you lean against a wall, and with self-belief and Brian's help create the environment, you push with the belief and the arrow breaks. And I love that, and I think it is such a great exercise to help accelerate awakening processes, because it really questions the beliefs of what is possible, what is the reality. Because when you say to people, I say it a lot to people about what happens with this, and they all gasp and feel like, how is that possible? But it's completely possible. I've done it a few times, and after Shine, I actually bought some longer arrows, Brian, as well, and did that at home with my partner as a proof. I haven't done it for a while. I'm starting to feel like I might need to do it again soon, just as like a test really to keep me on it. So all of this is how I ended up going to Shine. And Shine is an amazing experience, and the fact that it was 2017 on the Isle of Wight. Why is Shine so amazing? And obviously it's Brian's teachings and the environment, but it's the people that are there that makes it like special. It's the love, the sharing, the heart-centeredness of it. And I must admit, I was still a little bit green the first time in Shine. And I have to say, Bruna was behind me. And I must say, I turned around and thought, what's this old lady doing here? I was like, and by the end of it, wow, she's just like an absolute like goddess, like healing, powerful, yet gentle, like probably the most amazing person I've ever met in my life. And I still remember her a lot in my heart now. And she is amazing. So I'm going to tell you just a couple of examples of what actually happened to me at Shine. So I think it was day 2, and we were mixing, and I introduced myself to a lady called Valerie who was speaking there. I said, I'm Dana, hi. She said, Dana, I've had one of my angels, my guide, she's an angelologist, she said, have asked me to help somebody called Dana today. And I was like, oh, right then, okay, and didn't really think much of it, and just sort of carried on with the sessions and everything. Thought it was a bit weird. And then we were doing the meditation, and it was a really, really powerful meditation. I felt my whole self left my body. It was a complete separation. It's something, it's been haven't experienced it before. And as I was doing it, I was releasing a lot of negativity, and I was beginning to cry and make whimpering noises in the grief. And it was a little bit embarrassing. I was sort of aware of what was going on, and I didn't want to affect other people. And I wanted to stop, but I carried on doing it to the end and everything. It was really extraordinary, but it ended. And I had a sudden, really sharp pain on my left side. And I didn't really know what was going on. And for some reason, some intuition I went up to Valerie and told her what was happening to me, what this pain and everything, and she seemed to know what to do. And this is all quite bizarre, and it probably does sound woo-woo to you, but this is what happened. And she just started doing some things. Some of it's blurry, so I won't go into too much of it, but she started doing some sort of healing on me. And this voice, it wasn't my thinking voice, but it was still part of me, was shouting to me, like to say, I am from Egypt. And it was like really bizarre to shout that in front of a room full of people, as you are here sat listening to me now. I didn't know these people particularly well, and it was really odd. And I think at some point some people were sort of looking over and thinking, is she okay, sort of thing. And it was really new to me. And I have actually had that happen after this experience a couple of times. It seems to come up quite a lot. So we ushered off, Valerie ushered me off to a private room and continued doing some things. And it was just, I remember my legs felt like they were in this mud, and that's really one of the strong aspects I could feel. And she released something from me, and then the pain had gone and everything just calmed down again afterwards. And it was a really odd experience. And there was a chap there, Guido, who was exhibiting all these crystals, and it was lovely to have the crystals there. And he came up to me saying, you've got to put this crystal in the ground, you've got to put this crystal in the ground. And I was like, honestly, I thought it was getting very odd, but after what just happened, I sort of decided to go along with it. So I took the crystal to the garden by a tree, and on my life, I put that in the ground, and the universe took that crystal from me, like, and it took it, and honestly it took it. I do that quite a lot, and it's never happened quite the same, but on that occasion the universe really did take that crystal back into the ground for healing purposes. And later on reflection, I realized when I'd been looking at his crystals, there was one crystal I picked up, and I believe that that was the crystal that he had given me, which had broken. And people will say that them crystals break so you don't have to. I don't know how that works, but it apparently, well, as it seems to, it does. So that was all quite dramatic, as you can imagine, but I went home and I was okay with it, and I processed what had happened. And the fact is that I've actually been to Egypt 11 times in this life. And it's quite bizarre that there's definitely some kind of connection between my soul in this life trying to reconnect with the past. And it's not something I've really explored, and I think that I will later on. But what does this mean? This means it brings an awareness, and it should to you too, that it isn't just what's going on in this life, that from, I wouldn't have believed it unless I experienced it, but there is other things that have happened before now, and there are things that will happen again, and there are connections between them. And it's just really was quite mind-blowing. There's one more thing that I want to share with you, and it is about the burning hot coals. And to me, this just overshadowed all of that. It really did. It was just like phenomenal. And it was all dark, and we went down to the garden together, and Bruno and Brian got the coals going. And at first they were like in these round circles, quite deep pockets. And it was like Bruno and Brian were like hopping over them around and sort of like testing the ground for us. And something wasn't quite right with the way it was set up. And then they spread it out to like a path, so it was like a long burning hot coals, and we were all sort of just, it was just really natural, and it should be really organic. And people then got ready when they were willing to take their turn, so we all began one by one lining up, and Bruno would stand at the end and encourage us like this to cross, and we each did, and the more one did, the more the others wanted to, and we all did it. And it wasn't like a tiptoe across the coals. It was like I was a giant bashing my foot down as each step went along. And it was like, I was like a bell that had been bashed really hard, and the vibration I felt through every part of me was just vibrating. And so everyone had gone and stuff like that, and there was an actual opportunity to do it again. And I thought to myself, well, I'm going to do it again. When am I going to get this opportunity? And this time, you know, Bruno was around again, and I lined up to do it, and I was about to walk, and she had gone. There was no one there to encourage me, and it was really down to myself to believe in myself, to have faith in the nature of what this reality is, to cross that burning path again. And I did, and I'm really, really happy I did. It was a great experience, and it is just one of the best experiences of my life, and I still don't know how it's possible. really. I don't know, but thank you. That's everything I wanted to share with everybody. So I hope maybe you can learn from that. I just thought maybe by telling you my story, you might be able to learn something, really.
Well done, Dana.
Thanks, that space.
It was a dramatic experience on that day. I won't say who it was, but one of the people helping me to organise it said, "Should we get her out to one side?"
I bet. I know who that was as well.
when you were in the middle of your experience,
Yeah.
should we move her along? And
I know who that is. Yeah.
so yeah, I knew how much meaning that had for you. Those coals were really, really hot. I've done lots and lots of firewalks in my life, and it is the depth of the coal as well as the type of wood that is used that determines the heat. You know, you think about it, if you got a thin smear of coals, that's one temperature. If you've got them piled thick, and we had them piled very, very thick, that's a whole different temperature. And they were the hottest coals I've ever walked in my life. When Bruna told me to walk, I was thinking, are you sure? But she's been my spiritual teacher for many years, so I just got on board and followed through.
Trust.
Yeah, and it's sometimes, and I've mentioned this in previous weeks, sometimes we need to trust somebody else who believes in us because our belief is low. And then, of course, ultimately, it's about us believing in ourself and trusting ourself to be our own guru and to follow through with what we believe is right. And I think your sharing tonight has helped many. And there are other people that have connected with me and saying how drawn they are to certain countries, how they're going there many times within this lifetime, and they feel like they've had previous lifetimes there. Having past lives is something that I didn't believe in when I was young, but something I've come to believe in now because I've had my own experiences around it. I'm going to bring on the Pippa. You want to say something?
No.
I think you were there in 2017, weren't you? Or was it 2018 you came? I remember you being at least one of the shines. If not.
Yeah, I was at both of them, and thanks, Dana. But I had the total privilege of being Dana's buddy after that shine, which was fantastic. But I was really enjoying hearing you say about Guido and the crystal, because he gave me 3 crystals. He gave me 2 rubies and he gave me a Herkimer diamond and said, hold these 2 rubies in your hand with the Herkimer diamond, which will boost it. And I've had that Herkimer diamond made into a necklace, which I'm wearing now. Oh. And I always, it's the power of this particular Herkimer diamond is just fabulous. So it's like my protection. Also I feel it helps me to emanate who I truly am when I'm wearing it, the higher self, if you like. So that was lovely to hear your story, and here it is. So thanks, Guido.
I bumped into his wife Lisa just the other day actually, and he's really well, really busy. I think once things have settled down with the coronavirus and travel is allowed again and all of those things, we will move forward into having another physical shine at some point. I'm going to move into the PowerPoint presentation. Just bring it up full screen. So here we are then. we've gone through weeks 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We're on week 6, which is about celebrating ourselves. And the technique we're going to look at tonight's goal mapping. And as everybody here, I think, has done a goal map before, we're going to focus tonight on doing a goal map around higher purpose. Throughout all of the weeks, we're looking at this dual combination of how our self, the combination of thought, feeling, action, influences our life. We're both creator of ourself and creator of our life. With creating our life, it's not always instant. Sometimes it's a delay between thinking a certain way and seeing the reality of that show up. Back towards the beginning of Warrior Within, we looked at patterns of creation. And here we've got this pattern of seed of life, and it's the creation myth pattern. And then we've also looked at how patterns influence nature, and of course how patterns influence us, that we are a pattern of both thought and feeling and behavior. And as I was saying at the start of this evening, very much feel like I slipped out of some of my best patterns, and using now the mapping systems to pull me back into those good patterns. We started with doing a life map, and I'm still evolving my life map. I've drawn it all over again, and it feels a little bit like it's not as vibrant as I want it to be. And I feel like I need to add more to it. So I'm thinking to overdraw again with some colours and some symbols. And then we've got self-mapping, and this isn't my latest update because I've coloured in a bit more on the self-map, but it's from just a few days ago. And now, of course, the action mapping. I've just done my action map today. So here my life map, and I am very pleased with it, but still updating it further. My self map I'm particularly pleased with, and this is the one from a few days ago that hasn't been coloured in yet, but really bringing me to a different depth. And then today with the action map here, so right in the centre, what I noticed was my low self was about I avoid the difficult things, I distract myself, whether that's with TV or jobs that are not important. I distract myself from the things that are difficult. And the questioning process I went through today was, well, why is that? It's one thing to say I distract myself. Why am I distracting myself? And it is because deep down there's that fear of failure. When it's easy things, I've got no problem being motivated, getting on with them, doing them, being diligent. I've worked hard my whole life. I don't have an issue with working hard. It's when there's something difficult to do, when it's outside of my comfort zone, and I start to feel the fear of failure, of not getting it right, of not being good enough, I avoid it. I distract myself in lots of different ways. And I don't give time to get it done, and I do other things instead. And so identifying that, noticing the thought process I go through, the feeling process I go through, and the physical process I go through, really gave me some new insights today. And here the output. So right in the center, the thing that I noticed was when I do my meditation, that really sets me up for a good day. I get clear, I get connected with my high self, and I lose that fear of failure. Instead of self-doubt, which is my low self-mental, I get connected with that higher self that believes, and I choose to focus on what needs to be done for the good of myself with a big S. And that by doing the meditation, I also find that feeling of peace within myself, peace within my heart, which is what I'm expressing here in the imagery on the emotional. So I've got my high self in the purple color. I've got like a magnifying glass, a finder glass, because I'm finding, and then I've got the bird of peace, blue bird of peace. It just sort of flowed out of my map, out of my mind and onto my map earlier today. So I've got the blue bird of peace. I'm finding peace within myself. And then at the bottom on the physical, I am giving time to myself because I'm worth it. And I'm choosing my high self on the mental. I really liked what Stefan suggested a couple of weeks ago now about doing a video. So I've already done one video, and I've seen everybody else done lots of videos where they're doing their life map. And so I intend to do a video on Facebook where I'll share my action map and also my self map. We've looked at the lift ladder here and the 7 principles, and I've shared the story with you about how this structure came to me in a visualization after coming back from a presentation that didn't go so well in Holland, and that these 7 principles have formed the philosophy that sits behind all the different mapping systems. So goal mapping, life mapping, action mapping, self mapping. It's these same 7 principles behind them all. And in particular, it's this core principle, which I know a number of you have latched onto. Stefan, I've seen it in your map and you've made mention of it, a movement with repose. And it's this principle that I learned in the Gospel of Thomas, that the balance of energies, left brain and right brain, a movement, we set the intention, and then we have an ease about how we move towards it. And in doing that, we find our balance. The 7 principles are 7 steps that help us move towards living this principle in our life, a movement with repose. I was doing some research earlier today, and I came across this little diagram randomly, but I've come to believe that nothing is really random in life. That when a plane is on a flight path towards somewhere, it's off track. I think it's 95, 97 maybe % of the time that it's off track, and it has to correct its course constantly because of the change in wind and conditions. And it's absolutely the same for you or for me in life, that we have a goal that we set for ourselves, and the winds of change blow. None of us could have accurately predicted the coronavirus a year ago. We may have feared something similar would come, but not in exactly the same detail that it has. And of course, it knocks us off track, and we have to constantly address and correct and make allowance for the changing conditions of life, which is why our maps are important. The 7 principles help us to be clear. And the first one, fundamental, raise awareness. And then the other one that's absolutely key, I believe, is number 5, become fully responsible. They're all important. If you take one away, like balance or purpose, or positivity, it doesn't hang together. But it's the two principles of raising awareness and becoming fully responsible that I believe, if we can master those two principles, it helps us with all of the others. They're key principles. And I mentioned this a few weeks ago, that I had a really, really intense dream some years back, more than 10 years ago now, where in the dream I'm parting the water, and I don't want it to sound too godly, but I'm sort of parting the water, the waves, and in my head there's this booming voice, like the voice of creation, voice of God, saying the keys of the kingdom are awareness and responsibility. And who knows where the message comes from? Maybe it's your own subconscious mind. And this is what I was saying earlier when Flavia was sharing about, she had feelings and a voice, and we get an intuition. I think it is always right to explore that intuition and to find out what the message is saying to us. And I've really come to believe, the more I've questioned this, it seemed like just a crazy dream. I woke up sweating, shaking. I drew this picture afterwards. My ex-wife thought I was absolutely mad. But it's more than 10 years ago now, and it's still with me. And the more I thought about it, the more I believe it's right that awareness and responsibility, if we have those two, we can really step into being a master of ourself, and through ourself we influence our reality. Many of you will be familiar with this structure. It's really, I've been teaching it for more than 20 years. It again came to me in a visualization, and it is really the process of how we create our reality, which all starts with the thoughts that we think. We're living in a world that is governed by the law of cause and effect. Your thoughts are the first cause. Everything around us is an effect. But if you trace the train back, the starting place of creation really within yourself and your life is your thoughts. Your thoughts trigger the chemical release, we've been looking at this over the weeks, that influence your feelings. Think positive thought triggers serotonin and oxytocin, and we feel happy. Think a negative thought, we trigger adrenaline, cortisol, and we feel anxious, sad, and fearful. The combination of thought and feeling influence our action or behavior. Goal mapping is about thoughts. Life mapping is really about feelings. Action mapping, as the name would suggest, is about our behavior. And we bring all three of those together, of course, in self-mapping. The combination of thought, feeling, and action influence our habit patterns. If you examine any of your habit patterns, and I've looked at mine very closely today, I've chosen one that I thought was really holding me back, which was all around procrastination and avoidance because of fear of failure and getting things wrong. Choose the one you think is most holding you back, change that one pattern, and it streamlines your energy so you can flow more easily within the whole sea of creation and move towards your consciously chosen desires. Any habit you examine, like I looked at my routine today of procrastination, it won't just be a physical behavior. There will be a mental element, a belief attached to that behavior. There'll be a feeling or an attitude, and there will be a physiology, a physical element, or an actual routine, a behavior you go through. Thoughts, feelings, actions, habits ultimately start to influence and shape our results in life. And then here's the challenge. If we are unaware, if we don't have a high level of self-awareness, if we haven't got that first principle of raise awareness in place, the danger is that we are reactive. We don't think it through, we react, and what are we reacting on? Well, we're reacting based on an old habit pattern, an old pattern of thought or feeling or behavior that may, or very often may not, be appropriate to the situation we face. And this cycle here, which is known as a self-actualization cycle, can often become a downward spiral because we react in the wrong way, or we overreact to a situation and we don't think it through, and we say something, do something that actually makes the situation worse. And we think a more negative thought, feeling, action, habit produce a more negative result, react again to something else that's happened, something someone said, and it triggers this escalation. It's like a feedback, a pattern that feeds on itself, and we can spiral down. And of course, this cycle, this self-actualization cycle, can spiral down or up, and very much the hinge point is on our thoughts. Because we are, each of us, born with this divine gift, and I really believe it's the spark that is talked about that makes us like the image of the Creator, that we can consciously choose our own way in life. We can choose our own thoughts and our feelings and our behavior in a way that other life forms cannot. And while all life forms will have awareness to different degrees, it seems that humans have the highest level of self-awareness and are able to self-determine. So choose our own habit patterns and behaviors in a way that other creatures really can't. And often in the workshops, I'm asking people to fold their arms left into right, right into left. And if you try it now and you fold your arms, and then I ask people fold them the opposite way, and at first it feels a bit strange, but if you do it a number of times, what you find is it starts to feel normal. And normal and natural are not the same, of course. So it's maybe not even natural to fold your arms, but you develop the habit pattern, and whichever way you do it, after a while starts to feel normal. When you do it a different way, doesn't feel normal at first, but do it a number of times, and as you gradually form a new habit pattern, it does start to feel normal. It felt so strange to me the first time I did this, 20 odd years ago. That may seem a bit trivial. It goes right to the core of what makes us uniquely different. Other creatures can't do it. There is a conditioning process, and one of the sort of simple examples of this is when they train elephants and horses and other creatures. And with elephants, they tie the elephant's foot to a big stake in the ground, and the elephant wants to be free, but it's only small. They take the elephant while it's still a baby, and the elephant tries to break free, but it can't do it. A neuron fires in the elephant's head, and it triggers release of chemical, forms the connection. But because it's a negative thought, it doesn't travel far, it's isolated, and at first the connection is faint. The elephant's trying to break free, can't do it. It triggers the thought, I can't. And each time the elephant tries to pull the stake and it can't break free, the connection gets stronger and stronger. And after a few days of being tied to the post, it's become what psychologists or behavioral scientists call conditioned habit. When the elephant is fully grown, it's a bit of a sad picture here, I know, just a small bit of rope around the elephant's ankle to a small peg in the ground, not a big one like we're seeing here, keeps the elephant still. It breaks the elephant's will to be free. And the elephant comes to believe that when it's got the rope around its ankle and it's tied to the peg, it can't move. And as it starts to tug without any real strength, as soon as it feels the rope pull on its leg, it stops. So the elephant's tricked into limiting its own power through the conditioning process. It's exactly the same with horses. And this horse here, and if you search on the internet, you'll see many pictures like this, being tied to a plastic chair. Of course, that horse could pick the chair up and shake it all about. And it doesn't, because when the reins are hanging in the down position, it's been trained to believe, the neurology is linked up, that it can't move. And as soon as it feels the reins pull, the neuron fires, and it links with another neuron, and it forms that limiting belief that it can't, and so it doesn't. Learning this caused me to think about a lot of the stories that I'd heard growing up about my ancestors and circus and traveling funfair. And some of my ancestors had a flea circus, and they used human fleas, and they would put the flea in an upside down jar or glass to limit the flea's movement. And the flea would sort of jump and hit its head on the height of the glass. And they would just leave the flea in the glass for a few days. And the flea would be only conditioned then only to jump to the height of the glass. And it's how they would keep the flea on the flea table. This same process, the conditioning process, is in each of us. And it shows up when we fall into limiting habit patterns and limiting beliefs. And sometimes we become like a flea that has told herself we can only jump so high, go so far. We become like the poor elephant or the horse, chained to something that really we could break free from, but we're telling ourselves we can't. Sometimes it's an addictive behavior, sometimes it's a lifestyle, sometimes it's a place or a person. And the truth is that we are, all of us, capable of so much more than we often realize we are. It would seem from all of the research, and if you observe life, you can see it, that we are really the only species that have that full right brain imagination, where we're able to imagine something we have not yet done. And I'm choosing my words very carefully because people have often challenged me on this point, and they've said, oh, my dog imagines and visualizes and dreams, or other animals visualize, and I know that. And I've observed it many times in my own pets when I've had them, and in other people's. But it would seem that with all other creatures, they visualize or imagine the things they have already done. And what is different about humans is that we are able to visualize ourselves achieving something we have not yet done or experienced. And this is an absolutely key point. And it's why creating our goal maps, life maps, action maps is so important. In creating the map, you are holding the visualization, the intention that you desire for yourself that maybe you have not yet done, but by holding it in that right brain, you're commanding your subconscious to move towards it, your higher self to bring you realization about it, and your left brain starts to work out the best path to take you there. Once our thoughts are focused on the positive, and it's very much a choice. So the essence of responsibility is that we are choosing responsibility. able to choose our response. And so once we choose our response in life, and something negative may happen in our day, and we have an immediate, instant, unconscious negative response towards this thing that's happened, within a few moments it's a choice. And if we choose to focus on what's right, it triggers this upward spiral where our feelings become motivating, our actions have purpose. We're not just randomly running around doing things for the sake of it. We are focused on what makes a difference. Our habits become aligned. So we consciously choose, like I have done these last days, the habit patterns. Like for me, it's been getting up a little bit earlier, going out on my run, and engaging in the things that I know set me up for a good day, because we live in a world of cause and effect. And while some things will be random, if we choose our thoughts, we influence our feelings, we're purposeful in our action, we align our habits, it helps us little by little to design our results. We set some goals. We say, here is where I'm going with my life. This is what I'm doing. This is what I aspire to. Will we achieve all the things we want to achieve at first attempt? And no, we won't. And that's just the way life is. Quite often we set a goal, we don't achieve it. I've experienced it so often in my own life. And as I have mentioned last week and in previous weeks, if it's a good goal, we take feedback on what we may need to do differently, we give more time, and we continue along our journey. Instead of being reactive, we are proactive. We take the feedback and we feed it forward into the next set of thought, feeling, action, habit, and result, because we are response able to choose our response. And of course, sometimes we find ourselves in a really tough situation where the choices are very limited. And it's in those situations where we learn that the ultimate choice is that if there is something that is outside of our control, then we can always choose how we think and the chemical release, how we feel about that situation. I shared with you last week the story of my father and when he was dying, and how that affected me, and how guilty I felt for a very long time that I wasn't there at his death, and the challenges around that. I very much applied this principle from the moment he died onwards, that I made the conscious choice that I would focus on how wonderful it was to have had him for 46 years, rather than how terrible it was that he'd been taken from me. I was still, of course, sad. I still cried, but the tears were more directed towards gratitude, whereas with some of my family, their tears were bitter that he was taken too young, almost like someone was to blame for that. And I've made this choice many times now in my life that when something is outside of my immediate control, I choose my thoughts about the situation in terms of looking for what's right rather than looking for what's wrong. This inner cycle here, thought, feeling, action, habit, result, is reactive. It's a life pattern, if you like. It's unaware and irresponsible. If you look up irresponsible in the dictionary in England, it says to act without awareness, to act without consideration. So rather than thinking, all right, so if I do this, what would be the consequences, and going through consideration, being aware, irresponsible is, no, I'm not thinking about it, I'm just in it, I'm just doing it, and I don't really care. The outer cycle is aware and response able. And very much the starting place is about learning to choose. It was such an important life learning for me. Something I didn't learn actually until I was later in my life, that I could choose my way of being. I had a lot of limiting behaviors. One was losing my temper, and I would blame it on my genetic. I've always lost my temper, it's just the way I am. And I would blame it on my upbringing. Well, my mum loses her temper as well, and that's just the way it is, and I've learned it from her. And I would blame it on a lot of different things. Of course, we come into life dependent on others and irresponsible. And as we move through life and we grow, we get to a point, and traditionally it's sort of 18, 21, but for some people, because of their life experience, much younger, and for other people, much older. And some people, of course, never get to this place. But for most people, we get to a place where we need to make a jump from being dependent on others and irresponsible to being independent in ourself and life and actions, and response able. And it's really a mark of maturity, which is nothing to do with age. It's really about our ability to choose our response. That even if something happens that we don't like and somebody behaves in a bad way, that rather than being reactive, we are proactive in that we are thinking first and then choosing. And of course, many people sort of try and test out the water and see how it is. They don't really make the jump to the other side, and they end up in the middle ground here, which is the valley of excuses. And it's a dangerous place to be. I've found myself stuck in the mud of the valley of excuses a number of times, and I see other people there when they get some feedback they don't like, they're straight into the valley of excuses. As my dad used to say years ago, if it's to be, it's up to me. And what's important, I think, is that we know the difference between the things we can change and the things we can't change. And this quote came to my mind the other day: God, give me the grace to accept with sincerity the things that cannot be changed, the courage to change the things which should be changed, and the wisdom to distinguish one from the other. One of the simple things that has helped me so much, that I learned years ago when I was a trainer for Stephen Covey, is this little exercise of circle of concern and circle of influence. A number of times over the weeks, we've looked at this core structure that be, do, have, and the power really comes from who we are being. So choosing who we are going to be as a person, which is what our self map and life map is all about, influences then, gives power to what we do and leads to what we have. Sometimes the having is outside of our control, either because of the size of the goal, or that other people are involved, or that it is something that isn't about us immediately and impacts other people in some way. Whenever something is really concerning me, I engage in this simple little exercise where I take a sheet of paper and I draw out basically 2 circles. I have an inner circle, which is the circle of influence, and I have an outer circle, which is my circle of concern. And all the things that are bothering me, I write into my circle of concern. And then I ask myself, which of those things are in my circle of influence? What is it that I can do to help myself with these things that are concerning me? And sometimes there will be physical things I can do, phone calls I can make, meetings I can go on, letters I can write, actions that I can engage in that help me with the things that are concerning me. But the thing that is always within my circle of influence is who I'm being. And by focusing on what I have the influence over, by focusing on my circle of influence, it's the key principle of the mind that whatever we focus on grows in our awareness. And gradually, as we focus on what is within our influence, it grows and starts to eclipse our concerns. The thing that has really, really helped me with this has been understanding that our mind, our emotions, and our body, or physiology, are all joined together in what's known as a cybernetic loop. And that simply means that when you change one aspect, like mind, it affects the others, such as emotions and body. So if you start to think negatively, you release cortisol, you feel negative, but also it influences your body posture. Your shoulders come round, your head comes down, you slouch. Likewise, if you're thinking positive, that lifts your emotions, you feel positive, feel happy, and you have a more positive posture. It cuts both ways. So if ever you're feeling down, by adjusting your physiology, it sends a signal to your brain to trigger the release of serotonin, which lifts your emotions and again influences your body. Tony Robbins has a saying, physiology first. So if you're feeling very negative, rather than trying to work with your mind, check your body, check your physiology, put your body into a powerful posture and lift yourself, and then that helps you to think more positively and feel more positively. For me, the maps are my way really of reminding myself, plus I use my physiology and my positive anchor. When I was first learning about positive thinking and self-development, I found it really quite tough to hold a positive thought of my future because I was facing a lot of challenges and I understood the science. I was just very prone to worry. But then I met this guy who became my coach, John Shackleton. He was a British Olympic sports trainer. And he was the first person before I started to follow the work of Tony Robbins that taught me about using body posture. Of course, it's often in the news now about using power moves. It's a very simple thing, and it is natural. You'll see this in any child. My daughter, as soon as she could walk, if she was sad, she'd do the sad walk, or if she was happy, she'd be all upright and dancing. And it's raising our awareness. Again, back to that first principle of raising awareness and then choosing. So once you're aware, making the choice to engage through. When I was first learning about this, my coach would often say, act as if. When I was trying to explain it in my early seminars, I'd often find myself saying, fake it till you make it, because it's one of those lines that's sort of commonly known. But of course, it has quite a negative connotation. I believe the meaning is correct. We need to act as if, putting your body into the posture, holding the thought of what it is you want to achieve before you've achieved it, getting a good feeling about it. That's all acting as if. But of course, the word fake gives it that sort of negative connotation. And then a few years ago, I met this great guy in Norway, who's the leader of a network marketing team and a deeply spiritual guy. And we were talking about this one day, and he said, it's not fake it till you make it, Brian. It is faith it till you make it. And I just thought that was such a lovely twist on the saying, faith it till you make it. Because it really is about having that faith in yourself and your faith in your dreams and your hopes and your good wishes that helps you to follow through. And of course, gives you the reason to want to make the effort, because it's one thing knowing that you can choose to think positive and change your physiology, and it's another thing actually following through and doing it, because maybe you just don't feel like it in the moment. And again, it's what brings me back to using my maps on a daily basis. All the time I'm connected with why I'm doing what I'm doing. Of course, the days still go up and down to some degree, but it's being connected to that sense of purpose, being connected to a positive picture of promise for the future that helps me to continue during those tough days and tough times. So, for many of you, you'll know the cycle because you've been on goal mapping and been in the practitioner program. For others of you that are not certified in teaching goal mapping or haven't been on the one-day workshop, it will be new for you. So before we move on any further, I'm just going to give the opportunity now to open up the mics again. Just ask if anybody wants to comment, share, or question before we go any further this evening. Maybe got something they want to share, something they want to say, question they want to ask.
Can I ask something, Brian?
Sure.
So, do you think that with all this learning, do you think we can overcome? I mean, I'm still stuck on the energies. You know, it's going to be about that.
Go on.
But do you think that whatever is out there in the universe, do you think that with this mindset we can overcome it and just emanate stronger energy than whatever's coming in?
Yes, I do. And not everyone does.
Mm.
You know, just to keep it real and honest. Yes, I believe ultimately there is something inside of us that is superior to any habit, any start in life, any action, any outside energy. There is an essence of us that's connected to the creator and creation that is greater than all of that. And we can overcome anything that either we are challenged with or comes into our space. Do we all do it? No, we don't. Is there some guru somewhere that's got the answer? No, I don't think so. Is there some special training that's absolutely going to sort you out? Well, if there was, I think we'd all know about it. There'd be a long queue of people they would have all heard, and they'd all be going in at one end, and out the other end would be coming saints that are living an absolutely blessed life where they snap their fingers and everything works out well. I haven't seen that training anywhere. I don't believe that guru is anywhere.
That's you, Brian, the guru. You brought all the most fantastic teachings and put them into such simple steps.
Well, some of it, I think I've got a long way to go on a lot of it. And I was looking today at a lot of the deeper stuff around collective consciousness and realizing I need to simplify a lot of that teaching. But quite simply, you know, people for thousands of years have been looking for techniques that help them to be at their best. I think what we can say with real certainty is that our consciousness, our mind, has an influence over matter. I think it's been proven both spiritually, esoterically, and also, and I'll bring on some slides in a moment, I think it's been proven to a large degree physically. Now, because it's possible doesn't mean that we can just go and do it. We obviously have to learn. I believe the great challenge is that all of us are creating our reality all of the time. And very often we're creating at an unconscious level, and we are creating, drawing, attracting unwittingly the things we do not want, as well as the things that we consciously have chosen and do want. The more we can integrate ourself, high self and low self, become clear, clean of energy, that we are harmoniously aligned, thought, feeling, action, the more powerfully and quickly we're able to create our chosen reality. I'm selecting my words carefully there because each one for me is important. It's chosen reality. I go back to this movement with repose. And, on my self map, I bring it back up. I've got here, the words are, I'm graceful, but it's about being in the flow, but it's more than that for me. It's about being graceful purposefully, because I don't believe it's just the flow. It's about purposeful flow. If we're just in the flow, we can flow anywhere. One of the statements that kept coming to my mind last year when I was working on this, because I had somebody, another speaker actually, that was into mindfulness, really challenged me in a presentation saying, I don't set goals and I'm just in the flow and it just manifests. You're unaware, mate, of how the universe works. I'm sorry. I don't want to make it dismissive, but you know, there is an intention. That intention is about purposeful flow. You don't just go through the day and wait and see what shows up. You are setting goals. You are holding an intention. You may choose to use different words. And I think it's irresponsible to deliver those mixed messages to an audience. So if we don't have an intention, we can flow anywhere. And one of the lines that kept coming up last year when I was doing the research on this was from a biologist who said, and it was Bruce Lipton, we drift in the direction of our genes. So we're all born with a genetic influence, but what's been shown is that actually nurture is stronger than nature. And we may desire that we receive great nurture and guidance in our start in life from our parents and others around us, but we don't always get that. And what's personal development about? Well, it's learning to nurture ourselves. I've given myself, over these last 6 weeks since we started Warrior Within, I've given myself a lot more self-nurture. I've noticed how I've treated myself, whether that's doing the mirror work of saying, I love myself. And I thought about you a few times, Stephen, because you were saying about how you've been doing the mirror work. And I found in the past, I've sort of said it 5 times, and I'm saying it with meaning, whereas now it's become a chant for me. I love myself, I love myself, I love myself, I love myself.
Do you pose, Brian? Do you pose?
I was a bit. I was at the mirror, especially as I had a haircut yesterday. So I was at the mirror this morning going, I love myself, I love myself, I love myself. And I love myself particularly with my haircut.
Don't forget to blow yourself a kiss at the end of it.
I was going to lift it up. Dana mentioned Bruna earlier, and Bruna Ferrari's been mentioned lots of times, spiritual mother in Italy, and I had a lot of problems with my foot some years ago, and it was structural problems with the toes. And I went to her asking her for help, and her main treatment was that I had to put my foot in the most uncomfortable position and push my toes against the floor so it really, really hurt, and then say, I love myself with my foot pain. 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 Because she believed the structural problem was caused by a mental and emotional disalignment. And it was about learning to love myself even if I was in pain. So not I love myself because I got myself the way I want to be, not I love myself because it's all right now. You know, I love myself even with these things that are challenging me. And the amazing thing was that after some months, it did go. And I'd lived with it for years, and I'd been to the doctors, and nobody could help me. And just that one simple thing, I love myself with my foot pain. And it's always stuck in my mind, the line, because of her not being English, the way she said it. It was her interpretation from the Italian. I love myself with my foot pain, Brian, is what you have to say. It become my mantra every day. But it obviously did something powerful and meaningful for me to help turn things around. The other thing that I think has been really important for me, and it started with my first mentor. I've been blessed to have, I'd say 5, 6, maybe 7 actually, if I was to really think about it, count them all up, different mentors and teachers that have really helped me. But one of my early ones, when I was getting to grips with a lot of my low self-esteem, had come through my relationship with my mother, and in particular the guilt trips that she would use to control me, my brother, my sister, had caused me to feel that I wasn't good enough. That feeling of not good enough and being compared to others had really become the essence of the low self-esteem. And at first I was very angry with her, and he said to me, well, you want to drop all of that crap? I mean, where did she get the guilt from? Did she go and learn it in a course? No, of course not. He said, what was her own life like? Well, it was awful when she was a child. She was pulled out of school and sent to work in a factory at 12. And her mother died when she was 10, and she was raised by her aunt who didn't want her, and her aunt had 5 children. They all lived in a 4-meter caravan. She was made to feel guilty from a very young age. And what he said to me was so simple, but it had such a profound effect on me. He said, people do the best they can with what they have. And that includes their start in life. Your mum's start, Brian, wasn't very good, but she didn't ever set out to be less than her best. The way that she's become has been through cause and effect of all the different experiences that she's gone through in her life. And she's been the best that she could with what she had, her start and her beginning. And then he turned it around and he said, and of course you have been the best that you can with your start in life. And it's what I would say to all of you now. It's an easy trap to fall into the guilt pit, and it is a pit of despair, really. It's a rut that we get stuck in. None of us ever set out to be less than our best, but we have a lot of different experiences, especially when we're young. Our conscious mind isn't developed enough to work it all out. that don't always bring out the best in us. And some of those patterns take the rest of our life to turn them around so that we're able to really feel good about ourselves and live our life in the best way. I think if there's one thing that really helps us, it's having a sense of purpose that is bigger than we are. I think if we have that sense of purpose that is bigger than us, it causes us to strive to improve ourselves and be our best in a way that we wouldn't when we don't have that sense of purpose. Maybe the sense of purpose is being all we can be for our children or our family. For me, even though being all I can be for my children is so important to me, the purpose that came before that was wanting to make a difference to others with personal development. I felt so grateful to the first guy that introduced it to me, Mike Rosewarne, and he was my coach for a few years, and then he died really quite young. And I just decided, okay, I need to pay it now back and more, and go out and help as many as I possibly can. And that combined with the big spiritual experience I had, which I spoke about last week and the week before, very much caused me to just give myself over to it. The first week we had of Warrior Within, I don't remember what it was, but I remember I put on a fairly formal shirt. And tonight I've got on a t-shirt that says, "All is God." And I've had this shirt more than 20 years, and it's one that Bruna gave me when I very first met her on the very first occasion. I went and stayed in her house on top of the mountain. And she said to me, "All is God, Brian, and God is all." And she doesn't belong to any particular religion. She just believes there is more, and that all of it in different ways is just all different aspects of the universe. So let's go back to the PowerPoint presentation. We've talked about finding purpose, stepping outside of the comfort zone into the unknown towards that thing that makes our heart sing. And we have different levels of purpose. So within life mapping, we talked about prime purpose, which is simply choosing to be your best. And then we also talked about in week 4, life purpose. So finding your path, and that the goals are the stepping stones on the path to move towards your purpose. What I want to talk about a little tonight is higher purpose. On the screen here, the picture that's showing, I think, just make sure everyone can see the screen, is rhesus monkeys. And I'm sure many of you are familiar with the story of the 100th monkey. The story goes that in 1954, a group of scientists wanted to study rhesus monkeys in an environment where it was unconnected to humans. And they found this remote island in the Pacific off the coast of Japan where no people lived, but there was a colony of rhesus monkeys living there. And they wanted to lure the monkeys out into a position where they could film them in a good way. And they knew that from observing rhesus monkeys in other parts of the world, that what they liked to eat was sweet potatoes or yams. And in the picture here, you can see them laying on the sand. And so they took many sacks of these potatoes with them, and they would lay them out to entice the monkeys to come into a position where they could film them. And then one day, one of the monkeys dropped the potato into the water, and in fumbling to pick up the potato, the monkey accidentally washed the mud off of the potato and then ate it and realized it tasted a lot better without the mud. And so she went off and she taught her sister the same trick of washing the potato before eating it. And then together, her and her sister went and taught her mother, and then they taught others, and gradually the numbers grew. And when it got to around 99 monkeys all learning this new trick of washing the potatoes before eating them, spontaneously the whole colony of monkeys on the island, about 500 in total, started engaging in the behavior. And then gradually, over a period of days and weeks, reports started coming in from other places around the world of scientists observing this same behavior in rhesus monkeys, that they were going off and washing potatoes before eating them. And it triggered the birth of the concept of the 100th monkey syndrome, that when you reach a critical mass of consciousness, it can affect consciousness globally, universally, and likewise in humans. And there have been lots of experiments to see whether a collective consciousness can be proved. Going back here, this newspaper article goes back to the 1930s with Duke University using an experiment where they were seeing if people could influence the role of dice. And then gradually more sophisticated experiments. This image here from using a electronic counter, a coin flipper. Now, a little more than 20 years ago, about 22, 23 years ago, I became interested in the work of the Global Consciousness Project. And it was started by a man called Roger Neilson, who was a scientist working in Princeton University. And he was employed at the time by Boeing to do research to see whether a pilot's consciousness could affect the instrumentation on the aeroplane, because the instrumentation was becoming more and more sophisticated, and Boeing and a number of other organizations, aerospace organizations, were genuinely interested when the instrumentation becomes really sophisticated, can a pilot's consciousness influence the controls and the instrumentation? And they set up double-blind experiments, and Roger Neilson, along with some other scientists, created a random number generator, RNG. And the first ones they created used a very low-level radioactive substance, piece of material that gave off random particles, and they would use that to randomly generate 1 or 0. And then afterwards they started to use other devices, lasers. But basically it's like an electronic coin flipper, that sometimes it generates a 1, sometimes it generates a 0, and it does it millions of times every moment. And the probability is, when you've got a random generator, so if you imagine you're flicking a coin up into the air lots and lots of times, over millions of times, 50% is going to be heads, 50% is going to be tails, right? Is the average of probability. And they print that out as a flat line. And what they discovered was that when they brought in people and they had this a random number generator, isolated within a sealed glass box, and they asked people to sit within 2 meters of it and focus their mind on it, and to think 1, they could influence the output that it was more often 1. Or if they asked them to think 0, it would be more often 0. And they carried on these experiments for around about 7 or 8 years. And then they decided that they would make a smaller version and they would take that out into the field and they do some field work. And so they started to take the generator to different places to see if it would pick up on the consciousness of people around them. And they were particularly interested in how would it pick up on the consciousness of groups. And they would take it to places like football stadium, music conference, but it didn't register much there. The places where it would really register were when they would take it to spiritual festivals. And I'm not on about like a music festival, but like a mass prayer meeting, mass meditation. They took it to the pyramids. They took it to all sorts of different sacred sites. Then they come up with the idea of, they did that for about 5 or 7 years. And then after about 20 years of research, they come up with the idea of, let's embed them in universities around the world. And more than 100 are embedded in different universities all around the world. And all of the data feeds back into Princeton. And it forms this flat line graph. And then in 1997, I think it was, for the first time they saw the graph go off the scale. And it was the death of Princess Diana. And they spent a long time analysing the data, thinking that maybe it was just some sort of blip or mistake. But then it happened again. And the next time it happened, around 2000, don't remember the exact date, was when the World Trade Centers were attacked by the terrorists. When they started to examine the data more closely, what they saw that really caused a lot of questioning was that actually the spike in the data started a few hours before the first plane struck the tower. It was small but noticeable. And it got a lot of the scientists really thinking more deeply about the possibility of precognition, that on a higher level, we do know what's coming. And there are lots and lots of examples of this throughout history and in different ways. I've had my own experience of it, and I've seen it in my own children, particularly in a state of either heightened excitement, when you're in a real frenzy of excitement, or fear, that you can have this moment of realization, either about yourself and something that's coming, or about someone else that you're strongly connected to, like a mother and daughter connection, and a realization something's happened. They've measured now more than 500 different global events that have triggered, they call them eggs, EGGs, okay, eggs. They're these random number generators. And of course, there's a lot of data and research now looking at both Black Lives Matter, because that's triggered a huge spike, and of course, COVID. when they examine things like if they take the generators to a music festival, sports event, even something like the Olympics, doesn't really register. And what they've gradually identified that causes the register is when there is a real outpouring of human emotion, but the emotion that triggers the event more than anything else is the emotion of empathy. And it's, again, quite a human characteristic. When you have a lot of people with a strong feeling of empathy, so if there's been an earthquake, a terrorist attack, somebody dying that's well thought of, and I'm thinking about COVID-19 with the level of empathy that was felt for our healthcare workers and emergency services and all the people making difference. That's caused a massive spike. I was looking again at some of the data today. I don't know how I first come into contact with it, but it's more than 20 years I've been looking at their work. When I was looking at it again today, because I wanted to mention it tonight, and somebody did write to me on it a little while ago. I don't know if it's yourself, Dana, or somebody else, but somebody said to me, have you looked at Global Consciousness Project and what's happening with COVID-19? So I wanted to mention it tonight. When I looked today, I noticed there's a whole bunch of organizations that I've followed over the years, like HeartMath and others, that are all now plugged into this work of Roger Nielsen. And when I first started to look at his work, he was very left brain stiff ass, and he's now become really quite right brain woo woo. Bless him. So I think he's had his own journey. When I link that in with the 100th monkey, the question that always comes to me, and it's the question that I want to leave you with this evening, is what if you're the 100th monkey? Now, it's the question I've often asked myself, is when I don't always feel like making the effort, what if I'm the 100th monkey? What if me making the effort to raise my energy, think my best thought, act in my best way, I may be thinking it's just about my day, but who knows what ripples that's triggering, how that's traveling out. Maybe it's that little bit that was needed to tip the scales and influence things in a different way. What if you're the 100th monkey for your family, for your community, maybe your society? Who knows, if enough of us all do it together, maybe for humanity. We go through the slides here to bring us through towards a conclusion. Many of you will be familiar with this, the 80-20 law, that 20% of what we do makes 80% of the difference in our life. But the real 20%, of course, is not what we're doing, it's who we're being. When we're being positive, when we're being empathic, it creates that exponential growth curve. Exponential growth curves are found everywhere in nature. So here, the rise of social media. This is the extinction rate of the dinosaurs and growth rate. Here's the growth rate of bacteria. And you can see exponential growth curves. And we've got two curves here. When I saw this diagram earlier, it just made me think about COVID-19, and that we've gone through one curve, and already the scientists are saying the likelihood is this winter we're going to see another growth curve, maybe even bigger than the one we've already gone through. Exponential growth curves start off quite slow, they gradually build, and then you reach the trigger point, the tipping point, where the growth becomes exponential. This can be an exponential growth curve on something negative when you spiral into a bad habit, or something positive when you spiral into a good habit. And if you are ever unsure that you can't make a big difference, just look at this little video here. I found this a couple of years ago, and well, let me see if I can go back, see if it will play. It's got a tiny little tablet there. And they're set at the 80-20 mark. So each one at 20% bigger than the last. And look, from knocking over just that small one, I'll play it one more time, I think. With just a few more iterations, if you were to keep going, the big block would be so big within another, I think it's 7 or 8 iterations, that it becomes the size of a skyscraper. So sometimes the trigger of something very, very small can influence something just so big. What are your tipping points? You know, what are the small things, the things that are easy to do or also easy not to do? So I've already said today, I've shared about fell out of the habit pattern of doing my meditation. 5 or 10 minutes is all it takes me to do a quick meditation, but it makes the biggest difference. It tips my day in a good way rather than a bad way. So what are some of the tipping points for you, mentally, emotionally, physically? We've gone through 3 of the maps, but don't let that be the end of it. Update those maps with new insights, small changes that you can make that's going to lead to a big change in your day. By being your best, you do your best, you have your best results. Prime purpose, all about being your best. And then life purpose, following that thing that makes your heart sing. Higher purpose, leaving the world a better place. What I'd like you to think about is, what's that higher purpose for you? We went through these 7 questions the other week, on week 4. For me, this is the key question. What one great thing would you dare dream for yourself if you knew that you were guaranteed to succeed? So there was no chance of failure, that whatever you put your mind to, you could do it. It may take you the rest of your life and a huge effort, but you could achieve it. What one great thing would you dare dream for yourself? I would like you this week to create a goal map of that higher purpose. I'm sure that many of you already have many goal maps. And maybe, like me, you have a goal map about your purpose. In fact, I don't know if I can turn the camera and see it, but on my wall at the end, no, I can't quite get it in the camera. I've got my goal map up on the wall, my big one, my Lifting 7 Million Lives map. Having a goal map about higher purpose, leaving the world a better place, I believe is an essential part of the journey. I want you to connect with your buddy. Part of the benefit that I've felt in doing the Warrior Within journey has been that it has made me accountable to follow through in a greater way, look at my maps, do my affirmations, engage in the work. That's what your buddy is there for, and you for your body. I want you to follow through as well with obviously looking at your maps, connecting with your buddy, sharing, as we all have been, sharing your map into the Facebook group. And I don't know if any of you have used a pendulum before, but I would like you to start to explore a little using a pendulum over the next week for yes and no answers. This is a little pendant that Bruna gave me some time ago, and I use it as a pendulum. So if I am unsure about what is the best thing for me to do, sometimes I will turn to this to access my own subconscious and higher consciousness. And I simply ask, is it a yes or is it a no? Right? You can only ask yes or no questions, not tell me the name of or something like that. It's just simple yes or no. And the starting place is, firstly, get yourself a pendulum. So you can go and buy one if you want. Some of you will already have one, but you can also just go and make one, and it might be fun to make one. And it can be as simple as this, a washer on a piece of string. All right, doesn't need to be an elaborate woo-woo. And so you hold the pendulum and you ask, show me my yes, and see which way it swings. Show me my no. So with mine, for instance, show me my yes, and I always get a diagonal this way for yes, and I get a diagonal the other way for no, and then variations on it in terms of the level of certainty.
Just asked if there's someone in here, and it said yes.
Okay, then maybe right. Maybe there is.
It said a really strong yes. I said, is there an angry spirit in the house? It said yes. Seriously, I'm not going mad.
No,
apart from the fact I'm keep interrupting you. I'm not going mad.
I totally believe you. So have a play with the pendulum, because I think it's a great way of accessing intuition. Ask yourself about your higher purpose, the mission that you are here for, and create your goal map on that. Please create your goal map using the online. If you want to draw, that's fine. You can draw, but upload your drawings and have your map online, because having your map online is the easiest way to share it with your buddy. And in sharing your map with your buddy and interaction, I'm going to have more to say on this next week. There will be some sort of feedback where you'll want to make changes on the map. And already I'm seeing this for my self map. There are changes I'm going to want to make, and I'm going to need to redraw it or cut some paper put over the top of it. But if you're using the online, you can change the map easily. Sharon, you had your hand up.
No, I was just showing you my pendulum. I've got a crystal.
It's a lovely looking one.
I haven't used it for ages. I've got it hung up in the window.
Good time to
It's got a rainbow coming through it.
A number of you have asked me about book list, recommended reading list. I haven't put one together yet. There are recommended reading lists in the Goal Mapping book and others, but I haven't done one of the books that have been most meaningful with relation to Warrior Within and Shine. But I pulled some off the shelf earlier, and I will put one together and I will post it in the Facebook group. And then what might be nice is if everybody added to it. So this one, little book on sacred geometry. Sacred geometry is so expansive. Some people have said that it satisfies both the right brain with the patterns as well as the left brain because of the structure. And the more I understand of sacred geometry, the more I see it everywhere in life. I believe the simple books are the best. because it is such a big subject. You could spend your whole life just studying one aspect of it, like the Kabbalah, for instance, is an aspect of sacred geometry. So having something that gives you the overview, I think, is good. The Upanishads, thought to be more than 10,000 years old, was oral tradition before they were written down. Again, simplified version, deep wisdom from India. This book's had a huge influence on me. Accelerated Learning by Colin Rose. He was one of the founders of the accelerated learning whole brain activation. He's not so well known really, but look here, I've just randomly opened it at a page and we've got high self and low self showing. This book's 25, 30 years old, but he was right out there years ago and just done some great work. This book, Kirlian Photography. Kirlian was a husband and wife team that invented the camera that takes a picture of the electromagnetic field. And my Italian mum, Bruna, knew them. She gave me this book many years ago, helped me to understand the scientific nature of aura. Tantra. So again, lots of aspects in here of what we've been talking about with low self and high self and how the triangles come together and the deeper meanings around the chakra. Likewise, yantra. Again, you can see the imagery here that so influenced me over the years. I haven't mentioned any of the normal personal development type stuff, have I? Tony Robbins, Stephen Covey type stuff. And then this book has been huge for me over the years, Fractal Geometry, and understanding the power patterns of creation and how mathematics, form, color, everything really is connected to everything else. So please create your goal maps and share them into the group, connect with your buddy, follow through with the exercises, have a play with the pendulum to access intuition. It's a bit woo-woo, but there's definitely something in it, and it's something that I've come to trust over the years. I still have my gratitude letter here. On the 20th is the new moon, and I have a feeling that's a good time to be doing something with the letter and releasing it. I'm not sure what that is yet. Maybe I'm going to post it. Maybe I'm going to burn it. Can I show a video of you doing an arrow break-in? It's a great example, breakthrough. Stefan, yes, you can. Do you have it there? You want to share it now? Let me spotlight you. I'm in purple and orange, look.
Yeah. As Dana talked about it.
I think I've got a video of you somewhere, Stefan.
Yeah, that would be great to see.
Also breaking the arrow. And next week then is our last week of Warrior Within. I want to go through more sharings, less content next week, asking people what their experience over the weeks has been, what their breakthroughs has been, and asking you also about how we go forward for the future. I'm going to run another program early part of next year, and I will invite everybody back onto that program. I'll keep the Facebook group going in the meantime, if that's what you would like. But I want to hear from people what they would like to be included, and how we use the Facebook group and how we keep the insights and the growth alive for everyone once the program has come to an end. In around 6-7 weeks' time, I'm also going to be running the new goal mapping coaching program, and I'll speak briefly about that next week because some people have already asked to join it. And for those of you that have already been on it, you'll be invited back on because you've already been on once. And there are other people that have said they would like to become certified in goal mapping. So I'll talk about that a little next week. But for now, if there are any last questions anyone would like to ask, very happy to answer them now. And if not, I wish everybody a wonderful evening. I hope that you'll feel well, Flavia, in your home.
I'll strangle him.
We'll hope to see you next week.
I'm feeling stronger, much stronger after this call. Thank you so much. I really needed to be reminded that I'm stronger than whatever it is. And I also
more than anything else.
Thank you.
Don't strangle anybody. Let Gunilla.
No, I won't. I won't.
Speak to Gunilla, and I guarantee you, you can already see it. If you look at Gunilla in the picture, she's already got the answer to what you're looking for. You can see it in her whole, everything about her. So do that. First thing in the morning, and I guarantee you, you'll be a lot more happier.
I trust
just
that.
Look at Gunilla's face. You can see it. You can already see she's got the answer. And if it wasn't so late, because I think she's like 1 or 2 hours ahead of us.
2 hours.
She would have told you tonight.
I could see as soon as I said there's someone in the house. I could see by the expression on her face that I wasn't going mad. So that was my reassurance there.
I wish you all lots of love.
Thank
Have
you.
a wonderful evening. Speak to you soon.
Thank you, everyone.
Good night.
Thank you.
Bye. Bye-bye.
Bye. Brian, thank you for your amazing share last week. I know I wasn't here, but I watched the replay, and that was the most I've seen you laugh ever.
Yeah, I was in good mood.
Really lovely to see.
Nice to see you, Flavia.
And
Take
you.
care. Lots of love.
Bye.